United States of Lead is an informative podcast that may contain sensitive material and the occasional F-bomb. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Cult of Corporation, a spinoff from Paul and Andrea of United States of Lead, where we dive into the cult-like mentality of corporate America. This week, we're going to be taking a look at the U.S. strategy on countering corruption, which I can't remember how I even got to this. I was researching last night, and I think I might have just even put in corruption in corporate America in Google, and this popped up.
This feels appropriately rabbit hole-ish. Like this is like you could have started, looking at corruption in the Vatican and ended up at a site like this. It seems legit.
Yeah. But I figure since, that's what we're talking about is corporate America corruption. I was like, okay, well, let's see, because this is from June 3rd, 2021. It starts out with a quote from President Biden saying, oh, and quick side note, if I sound a little nasally, it's because I have so much mucus inside my head, I don't even know how it's possible. But corruption threatens United States national security, economic equity, global anti-poverty and development efforts, and democracy itself. But by effectively preventing and countering corruption and demonstrating the advantages of transparent and accountable governance, we can secure a critical advantage for the United States and other democracies, end quote. The one thing I noticed too with all this is they make it seem like this is like a new thing that's happened.
I'm getting that vibe. Like I'm also thinking like, so does monopoly capital. This is not new. This is just.
Yeah, there was this really good quote on capitalism, and somebody said the only way for capitalism to work is with morality and ethics. And if you don't have those, it doesn't work.
Oh, I would disagree. I would say it's immoral and unethical to maintain a capitalist system. You would have to use it for a period of expansion and then knowingly, it'd be like growing a business and saying, no raises, no.
Like a cap.
We're gonna work nights and weekends and we're gonna get it to this point and then we can really enjoy ourselves. But yeah. Which we're certainly at. But the reality is the only way capitalism would work is if we had infinite access to infinite resources.
Yeah. But that's kind of what they're saying though, is like, okay, so if the CEOs, instead of making 980% more than their employees, made only 200% more than their employees, and then that would all trickle down, as they like to say.
Or maybe they don't make more than their employees.
That too, but I'm just saying if we're going to keep a capitalist structure of that, there is ways to have that morality and, I don't know, pay your taxes like everybody else. And that growth can continue, but that growth would continue for everybody, not just the people at the top.
I see what you're saying, because even in this quote, it's like corruption threatens the United States. So it threatens national security, economic equity, global anti-poverty, and development efforts, and democracy itself. And there comes a point when it's more profitable to
do the right thing,
leverage national security. It's more profitable to wipe away economic equity. It's certainly driven by poverty, by the growth of poverty. It's like, oh, well, capitalism it has a potential to halt our anti-poverty effort. Capitalism is an anti-poverty effort I'm sorry, it is a poverty effort. It is a poverty effort.
Not anti, but is.
When was that? That was not a thing. That's just a thing recently. So
yeah, this idea that none of this existed before now, which that's been human society since
we've always been working on
dawn of
global
time.
anti-poverty efforts and development efforts, and really worried about democracy itself. It's like, no.
I'm just saying, as far as corruption and the divide of the poor and the wealthy, it's always been there. It's just a different hat every time. But all right, so they go on to say, quote, corruption is a cancer within the body of societies, a disease that eats at public trust and the ability of governments to deliver for their citizens, end quote, which, yes, but again, this has always been there. So like, it seems like, I mean, yes, it's definitely coming at a very dramatic climax. I think more so just because of the age we're in, it's being exposed more from a person to person versus just like the media telling you what corruption it is. Like people are visibly seeing it on video, and it's just, again, wearing a different hat. If
there was no legal corruption under our current system, there would still be these things. It's a part of our system. We need poor people to do shitty jobs. We need poor people to do poor people jobs.
We need people doing shitty jobs getting paid well. That's what we really need. So for instance, and I don't even want to say that this is a shitty job, but my mom said, for example, with the post office, when she was just getting out of school, or no, not just getting out of school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the 80s, the post office had this huge test to like see if you could become a postal carrier. And she said it was like this huge convention center and everybody was there because the post office was the job you wanted because of the benefits and the pension and this and that. And she said, and look, now you can't even get somebody to do it because you're getting paid $16 an hour. And she's like, these jobs that are so important, whether or not you value them because they're cool or not, but like if they're part of the functioning of society, they need to be paid well and they deserve to be paid well. That's the most important thing.
Or another way of looking at this would be not necessarily getting paid more, but having material assurances. Like, I don't need lots of money. What I really, really need is to know without thinking that I have access to healthcare, not health insurance, that I have access to food, that I have guaranteed housing. I don't need to worry about these things going away. That's what I really need, is not more cash.
The most frustrating thing, like I think of like the rail workers trying to get those paid sick days.
So scary.
And how they make this to be this huge ask because they can't afford to take off either, so it's disgusting because it's like there's enough money to do all this, but that money is being hoarded by certain people. And if you're not valuing the people who are actually building this, so it's not Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos who are making this country run. It's shifting that perspective of we need to really identify what do we value. And again, so like this is important to see because like this corruption and this message they're saying, it isn't like, what do we value? The corruption has shown us that we don't value what we really should be valuing in our society. We value corruption. Yeah.
We've been fueling corruption. We've been investing in corruption.
Yeah. And so actually, so let's go a little bit further here too, because they go on to say the impacts of corruption impact nearly all aspects of society. It exacerbates social, political, and economic inequality and polarization, impedes the ability of states to respond to public health crisis or to deliver quality education. It degrades the business environment and economic opportunity, drives conflict, and undermines faith in government. Those that abuse positions of power for private gain steal not just material wealth, but human dignity and welfare, end quote. So that's pretty poignant especially with this rail thing, because this came out in June 2021. And it is really stealing the human dignity and welfare of people. Just the selfishness. I don't even know what else to call it. I mean, the corruption is just pure selfishness. And like you said, some people just like to watch things burn. And so a lot of it is just on people just sitting back and watching it because it's a show to them. The idea of not being able to value people in our society So the people who are upset on a certain side of things, like we were talking about earlier with the Rupert Murdoch cartoon and the construction worker looking at the person of color in their empty plate and Rupert Murdoch going, that guy's trying to steal your cookie, mate, and not looking at the person hoarding the plate of cookies. It's like our logo with the guy with the, the puppeteer and the guy saluting. It's like they don't even understand that they are a pawn for other people. The polarization, the inability to respond to public health crisis and have a quality education, degrading business environment. I mean, come on, with the monopolies that there are, how can a small business compete with Amazon? We can identify these things, but to actually change them is a whole nother story.
I think all of this is just toxic. I think this is gaslighting. To say like, oh, this is hurting our ability to respond to public health crisis. Well, so is spending untold billions on wars that will never fight and wars that we have no need to fight. It is corruption, but it's also just the system. If we really believed in this, there have been some supermajorities in the past. We would have some form of this. The conversation around like healthcare, the conversation around abortion would have been, and we're seeing it's gotten to the point where there's one side that's saying we are in control of your body, just put up with it and live with it.
And they somehow surprisingly didn't realize that people were like, no, thank you.
But then there's another
surprised people were that women weren't like, yeah, that's okay.
There's another side of the political aisle that said we kind of want it. Well, really what they're saying is they wanted to use this because they didn't actually want to do real work and create real change. They just wanted to have this hanging over us, but they could have changed it. If this was really a big deal to people in power, it would have been changed. This is the system.
Here's the other thing too, is so people are up in arms about cinema changing to an independent.
Yeah.
And like about like the Democrats having the majority. And it's like, it doesn't matter whether or not she identified as a Democrat. How she voted is how she voted. So you do know, it's like her affiliation and anybody's affiliation. And it's like, so that's something that needs to be, this idea that like, because you're in this party, you vote this way. It's like, that's not how it works. So just because she had a D next to her, she didn't vote for anything that the Democrats were voting for, except for like two things. Also, people need to be highlighting, okay, what is this bringing to our attention? How are you even allowed to change parties in the middle of your term? Sure. How is that even possible? Now that she's done this, what should be passed is that you can't do that. Why is that even allowed? You shouldn't be able to do it until you're running next. I don't even understand why that's possible until you're up for election again. Then you can change your party. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think it's crazy that they're not combating her specifically and this sort of.
Well, here's the other thing. Did you see the administration's comments on it?
I saw Schumer's comments on it.
Oh, well, the press secretary came out with a statement and it's like over the top praising her and encouraging her on her change. Yeah,
they're over a barrel. Somebody told me once, if you give a speech, you do something in public, and someone comes up to you and says, great job, I really got a lot of what you did. That's really high praise. When somebody says, that was the most important thing I've ever heard, I'm so glad you're here, then it's like, no. I could totally see them. Oh, it's so important that Senator Sema is all of this. Oh, we really admire that shit.
So I see it as they're setting up to do something because as long as they praised her first, they couldn't bash her before they decide to make her an ambassador to some random country. Because I was just like, man, this is too praise. You know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, she's really screwed you guys over. Like, that's too much. So that's where I feel like it's Grandpa Joe energy. But yeah, so because that's something that's been a rumor that people said that he's just going to appoint her as an ambassador to some country because apparently that's
as a sitting senator.
Apparently that's something you can do.
Okay.
That's been the talk, like on that Mueller she wrote and other people's feeds. They've been talking about the fact of like he can make her an ambassador and get her out. I don't know if that's something she has to agree to first, but they said basically if the money incentive is good enough, they'll just put her in a cush position just to get her out of there. And she probably knows.
Why didn't they do that before? That has been my position with what's that awful little hedgehog. What's his name? He lives on a boat. Him and
He lives on a boat.
Yeah,
Mansion?
he lives on a yacht. Mansion.
Does he seriously live on a yacht?
He lives on a yacht. Why didn't the Democratic establishment just say, how much does it cost? How much are they paying you?
Maybe that's what they're learning now.
We'll meet it by 15%. We'll raise the money, whatever it is. Just stop doing this. What's the cost?
Well,
because they're clearly being paid. They're clearly anyway.
Oh, I mean, yeah. Like she doesn't go from what was it, 33,000 a year to 1.7 million or whatever it was.
Yeah, there's too many people who are doing that. You know,
like Bear too.
Yeah. Yep. They're all millionaires. They're all millionaires. How did that happen?
I wish this was localized more with the budgets. Like I go back to that furniture, the fact that they get $40,000 a year for new furniture. That's just insane. And so it's things like that where that's somebody's whole yearly salary in disposable furniture that you throw away apparently every year and get new stuff. Or if you're not using that budget, where does that money go? I want to see where that $40,000 goes if they're not using it for furniture. Are they allowed to put it somewhere else if it's not used? They go on to say, quote, recognizing corruption's ability to corrode democracy on June 3rd, 2021. So he recognized it in 2021. President Biden.
Better late than never.
President Biden established the fight against corruption as a core U.S. national security interest. Accordingly, he directed his national security team to lead the creation of comprehensive strategy that, when implemented, would improve the U.S. government's ability to prevent corruption, more effectively combat illicit finance, better hold corrupt actors accountable, and strengthen capacity of activists, investigative journalists, and other front lines of exposing corrupt acts, end quote.
Having a police officer work in a hostile situation and then later that day have to de-escalate a domestic dispute is corrupt. That is what they're doing is they've bunched everything into one job as opposed to expanding real services to meet real needs. And
like teachers too.
Here's an unpopular opinion. I'll die on this hill. And doctors. Doctors are plumbers that have been given an entire house to take care of. And then the doctor says, well, I am really into Tudor architecture. That's really like that's the analogy. You do not need all of this training. You do not need all of this power to keep the body running. If you have regular maintenance and you have these technicians that know different things, that's what we would really, really, really benefit from. It's not someone who knows everything and then spends their time defending their authority. And the same thing happens with cops. The same thing happens with teachers. It's just too much.
The corrupt people know this too, because they need that constant instability and chaos to continue doing what they're doing. When things start working well, people start going, well, wait a second. So let's see what their plan is. Yeah. So they got a whole plan. And again, this will be linked in the sources. To guide implementation, the strategy organizes U.S. government efforts to fight corruption under 5 mutually reinforcing pillars. Okay. So the first pillar is modernizing, coordinating, and resourcing U.S. government efforts to fight corruption. And
so many words. I don't know what they're saying, but go for it.
So they're saying that this will include better understanding and responding to transnational dimensions of corruption, including by prioritizing intelligence collection and analysis on corrupt actors and their networks, which I do think is important because the infiltration of all that with the elections definitely benefited somebody. Elevating anti-corruption work as a cross-cutting priority in key departments and agencies across federal government, including coordinating bodies at the Department of State, Treasury, Commerce, and U.S. Agency International Development. So there's clearly
they're going to work together.
Yeah. Increasing law enforcement resources and bolstering information sharing between the intelligence community and law enforcement.
Sure.
I just don't like how vague that is. You know what I mean? Like just having more cops isn't going to do anything. Sure, if you have the sharing information between, is that holding the law enforcement accountable then to make sure that they're combating corruption? Because that's where a lot of the corruption comes from.
Yeah, is Congress in this transnational dimension of corruption? I'm not buying it. But please, Tell us the other
please,
pillar.
Please.
Yeah, pillar number 2.
The next pillar, curbing illicit finance, which
Mhm.
this would be nice. So corrupt actors and their facilitators rely on vulnerabilities in the United States and international financial systems to obscure ownership of assets and launder the proceeds of their illicit activities. As the world's largest economy, the United States bears responsibility to address gaps in our own regulatory system and work with our allies and partners to do the same. So this made me think too, how you said that guy, Sam Bankman-Fried, how he made his money transferring from US to
Japan. Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. Oh, the other thing that I can't believe I didn't point out is his name.
The Bankman. Yeah.
Fried.
Yeah.
The Bankman Fried. Are you kidding me? That's too much.
Yeah.
So ways that they say they're going to do this is by issuing beneficial ownership transparency regulations that help identify bad actors hiding behind opaque corporate structures. I mean,
love to see it.
It's like literally everything we're talking about.
Go for it. Yeah. You would prove me wrong. I would love to be wrong on this one.
What are you going to do if all this ends up happening?
Well, we all will live a better life. Like,
yeah, true. I want you to like, I don't know,
we'll
shave your head or something.
Oh, sure. Like the anti-corruption challenge, the transnational anti-corruption United States of Lead Pod challenge.
Should we both shave our heads?
Great.
I've always wanted to shave my head, so
it's very cooling.
My head's not necessarily shaped right for shaving, but whatever. So again, that's huge. This isn't like this is new. This has always been happening. Because corporations are identified as people, but don't have the same regulations or responsibilities.
The Trump organization was found guilty on what? On everything. Over a dozen charges.
Yeah. That's huge.
And no one goes to jail. No one is really held. No human being is held accountable.
No human being is held, exactly. But they're saying
a legal person is. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but like I know what you're saying. Like they're paying a fine and then okay.
$1 million. Yeah. Rounding error.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, to them it is because
it's a rounding error. Yeah.
So the next is enacting first of their kind regulations that target those closest to real estate transactions to reveal when real estate is used to hide ill-gotten cash or launder criminal proceeds. And also when they pay that fine, where does that money go?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I think it goes to, I do not, so like the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, they make lots of cash that goes, as far as I can tell, into their budget.
All right, so
which is also a kind of corruption.
Yes, exactly. And next, they say that they're working with Congress and within existing regulations to make it harder for certain gatekeepers to financial systems, including lawyers, accountants, and trust and company service providers to evade scrutiny, which is important. Next, they say working with partner countries through multilateral fora, diplomatic engagement, law enforcement, cooperation, and capacity building to strengthen their anti-money laundering regimes to bring greater transparency to the international financial system, which, all right, whatever.
I'd love to see it.
I have faith in the first one, but not necessarily that last one. Now, here's the one that's important for us.
But let me just say this.
Yes.
This is saying they want to identify the bad actors behind opaque corporate structures.
Yes.
My pushback to that is I would like to see them start with the transparently corrupt corporate structures, not people who are trying to diffuse things.
Yeah, are you going after Joe Schmo who lives in like a town of a population of 500, or are you going for Jeff Bezos type?
We bought 40% of the available real estate in this area, and then our development team, our development subsidiary is doing 20% of the new homes that are being built in this area, in the same area. They're raising their price, so we will make money off that. Just the notion that they're raising the prices for the homes that they're making increases the value of the homes that we just bought, and that's going to kick the people out. That's all legal.
Well, like I just said too, with the Kristen Cinema thing, there are things where we don't necessarily think about it until it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know that you could change your party halfway through a term. So let's do something about that. So there's so many, like with loopholes too, there's certain loopholes where until it's actually like, oh, didn't realize that was something that could be done. So let's do something about it. But it's actually doing something about it. And if we were perhaps more of a preventative care society, we wouldn't have to do so much of this. But we're only a reactionary society. We only respond. And if we even do respond, it's only until something bad happens, where it's like preventative care works. It's like what you said, maintaining your body and even maintaining your car. Get your oil changed every 3,000 miles,
Right.
things like that, where you don't wait until your engine explodes.
And I don't need a PhD in structural engineering or in like mechanical engineering to change my oil.
I just know that every 3,000 miles it's best to change my oil. I know it's best to drink 16 to 32 ounces of water a day because it's best for my body. Okay, they said they're going to identify these actors, right? These corrupt actors. But the next pillar is actually holding corrupt actors accountable.
That's
this
it.
Is what we'd like to. So it says, well, the U.S. government shores up regulatory gaps and works with partners and allies to do the same. We will also hold accountable those who choose to engage in corruption. And the ways they say they're going to do that is by elevating diplomatic and development efforts to support, defend, and protect civil society and media actors, including investigative journalists who expose corruption. Next is launching a new initiative to engage partner countries on detecting and disrupting foreign bribery.
Great.
Like, okay. And bribery is bribery. And
well, yeah, we don't want foreign bribery, like domestic bribery is, I mean, that's how this is all getting funded. I'm not going to fuck with that.
Establishing a kleptocracy asset recovery rewards program that will enhance the U.S. government's ability to defend and recover I don't care about this. All right, working.
So a kleptocracy is a government based on theft. And I think
that's what our country.
I mean, I think the U.S. government's ability to identify and recover stolen assets.
So you're going to redistribute wealth and land to Native Americans?
I feel like America wants to up their Omar game.
Although, I did see that actually.
What's that?
There was a certain distribution of land coming for certain tribes. God, where did I see that?
I'd love to see it.
The other part of this pillar is working with the private sector to improve the international business climate by encouraging the adoption and enforcement of anti-corruption compliance programs by U.S. and international companies. Okay, encouraging doesn't mean anything. So I'm tired of that, we're going to encourage them to do this. If they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. We really got to look at corporations with children and the childlike mentality and corrupt businesses, corrupt people in the same way.
Right. So if you have a business and farming does this all the time. If you can make money off these that's what we're talking about here, are subsidies. This is not pizza parties. This is not hall room privileges. These are subsidies. So instead of using child labor, or instead of using this corrupt government, and we're going to pay you to use this system and you'll get out on top. But that means that becomes the base of that industry. So instead of growing and selling corn at the market on your tractor, you can just burn all your corn or slaughter your pigs for a loss.
Yeah.
Which happens.
So this is funny too, is for my parenting podcast, we were talking about Elf on a Shelf.
Okay.
This idea of using the fear of not getting a reward and the fear of punishment to teach your kid to be a good person. There's all these psychologists, saying the negatives of this Elf on a Shelf and how you can actually use it for positive. It doesn't have to be the elf's gonna report back to Santa about how bad you are. How about the elf reports back of all the good things you do? I
did not know that's what the elf was doing.
Oh, and if you touch the elf, it disappears forever. This was based on a book that came out in 2005. I had just learned all this week. And in the book, the elf reports back to Santa on your behavior. And if you're doing bad things, Santa's going to find out about it. And if you touch that elf, it disappears forever. So you adopt this elf into your family, but if you touch it, it's gone forever. I mean, it's so psychological.
That's some panopticon shit.
So these psychologists are saying just because it was based on this book doesn't mean you have to follow it.
Right. Or we could just not tell our kids about fake surveillance
true.
system,
Oh.
fake magical surveillance system of elves and
I
whatever
agree,
the hell
but
Santa is.
Well, the Santa's still that tradition, though. You know what I mean? So
Oh,
Santa's already doing that.
I think that's so gross. I'm
I
actually anti-Santa. I think it's really.
I totally get it, but it's like there's a balance of
I don't think
ruining that child's illusion when they,
Sure.
you know what I mean? It's like they have to learn it instead of just being like Santa isn't real when they're 4 years old. And then the other part of it is like you're supposed to move it in the middle of the night because it wakes up at night or something when you're sleeping, and then
This is too much. Oh my God! I had no idea that this is.
It's a thing.
Well, it does not sit well with me that one of the few universal cultural ties we have in America is our disillusionment around Santa. At some point, it was revealed to all of us that they're not real, and we do that in different ways. And we didn't all go through the knife ceremony. We didn't all go through the golden crown ceremony or whatever it is that we could have had that brought us all together. It's just, no, this is a big lie. We're just lying to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. It just doesn't sit well with me. And then
this
added dimension.
Oh, look into it, dude. It's intense.
Oh my God.
And I thought it was like, because it looks like it's this older, like 50s style.
I've seen them.
Yeah, but it started in 2005. So I didn't realize it was that recent. So anyways, the point I'm getting to, though.
Yes.
What they teach you, and like a lot of these psychologists are saying that a reward system for teaching a kid to be good is not effective, because you should just be good and be kind because it feels good to be kind. And that's what you're teaching a kid. So that's what I was getting to with this, is with the incentive of rewards being the only reason you're going to do something good in the long run isn't going to solve this issue.
I saw the best TikTok on this sort of subject, and it was this really funny guy. Someone comes up to him with the camera and their phone, and he's like, "Hey, could I get $1 from you?" In a grocery store. He's like, "Hey, could I get $1 from you to buy these chips for my son?" And the guy's like, Yeah, absolutely. And the guy's like, "Hey, what's your name?" Like, "Oh, my name's Jeff." And, "Well, I just really appreciate this." He takes the dollar. He's like, "Happy holidays, Merry Christmas," and then starts walking away. And then Jeff's like, "Wait, hold on. What's going on here?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "I just gave you $1 to buy this for your son, and you're supposed to give me more money back. You're filming this. This is on TikTok, right?" It's, based on like these TikTok videos where like you do something nice for someone, and they're like, "Oh, well, actually, here's $100 because like this isn't staged at all." But yeah, that's what it's.
Yep. We've been conditioned to expect a reward for doing something good.
Sounds like organized religion, to be honest, but whatever.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So childhood development shows that this system isn't good for childhood development. Therefore, it wouldn't be good for corporate development either. I said this at the beginning of when we started doing Cult of Corporation. We have to look at responding to this corporate type corruption and cult-like mentality with lessons from childhood development. And
we're developing, because we're developing. We were talking earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Any corporation at its beginning, like think of it as an infancy of a child, and how you develop that corporation should also mimic how children develop, with like the tools and certain steps you have to take and to be considered like an adult corporation, if you will. So yeah, this whole reward system and encouraging, I mean, if you're only encouraging by rewards, then you're not teaching these corporations and these corrupt people to do things because you just do it because doing the right thing it feels good and it's what's best for everyone, including yourself.
So then you're not setting up a system that supports like human existence. You're setting up a system that supports rewards.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where it's like, okay, this is a big red flag, because it actually does feel good to just be a kind person. It does feel good. So it says the United States strategy on countering corruption marks a new chapter in the United States effort to curb corruption's harmful effects. As accountability is vital, federal departments and agencies will report annually to the president on progress made against the strategy's objectives.
What are the objectives?
Those pillars.
I don't understand.
So he's going to want to see a report card. Okay, so like how have we
expanded anti-corruption focus on U.S. assistance and monitoring the efficacy of this assistance.
Like, okay, if we're going to be holding bad actors accountable, he wants to see a report card about how many bad actors are being held accountable.
I guess what I'm trying to do with this is just say these are really broad objectives, and
yeah,
good work, everybody.
We did it.
We did it. We've ended corruption.
We did it.
We clearly, with such a laser focused agenda, laser focused outward, of course.
This sounds great. Like the first paragraph sounds great, but at the same time, we have to identify where these things are coming from within. What was it, John Stewart, when he was saying how you can't heal a wound until you expose it and actually clean it. And
sure,
so we've exposed it, but now it's time to clean it. Like that wound is out there and everybody can see it. So now it's time to put on the hydrogen peroxide. It's going to sting, but we really need to cleanse it before it can heal. When these things are coming about, instead of just getting angry about it, there's a solution to it. Let's focus on the solutions. But anyways, that's all the time we have for this week. This came out in June 2021. So, I mean, to be fair, we did see the Trump organization. That is that's on this checklist with the real estate corruption. So perhaps it's coming true.
Love to see it. I mean, also, they talked about the bad actors behind these opaque structures. So,
regulations too, for me, that's a big one.
Because if you left the Trump organization to itself and everyone walked away and you just let it sit there, like nothing bad would happen. It took human beings to like write checks and direct resources, and those people are still there.
Yeah. Well, let's stay positive. And thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to United States of Lead, hosted by Andrea Elizabeth and Paul Kramer. Just a quick disclaimer, Andrea and Paul are not experts in lead poisoning. We do ask that you check our sources and read up a little bit more on your own. Thanks again for listening.